Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Indie Film Academy podcast, episode 11. Today we're talking with Jerome Courshon, creator of the Secrets to Distribution learning series. So, let's do this.
Welcome to the Indie Film Academy podcast, where it's all about learning how to make and market your independent film online. And now your host, Jason Buff.
Hello, and welcome to the Indie Film Academy podcast. I'm your host, Jason Buff. Good to see you. Welcome to the show. Today we're talking with Jerome Courshon about his training series, The Secrets to Distribution. Get your movie distributed now. And I'm really excited to announce that Jerome is offering a special discount only to people that listen to this podcast or people that listen to this intro. So if you go to www.distribution.la/IFA, there is a huge discount on this course. I mean, I'm pretty amazed that he's been cool enough to let us do this. So, and that's available for a limited time. If you are listening to this and it's been a few months since this came out, then it's probably going to be too late. But for those of you who are downloading this right now, the date is March 3rd. Then go there and check it out because this thing is going to end very soon. I also just want to throw in a note that I'm not an affiliate in any way, so this is not me advertising something for my own benefit. As always, if you like this podcast, please subscribe and please go to indiefilmacademy.com and sign up for the newsletter. Okay, so my first question to Jerome was regarding what are the main mistakes that filmmakers make when it comes to distribution. So here we go.
There's a lot of mistakes that are being made, and not a week goes by that I don't hear about some major mistake that somebody has done, either by them calling me asking for advice, or, I have several friends that are in the I have a lot of friends in the business, but several friends that are in the distribution arena specifically as a distributor or aggregator, and I hear the horror stories from them. Well, then I should say those friends of mine that are, the honest ones, that share with me the things that shouldn't be done. And of course I want to say that I know everything that a filmmaker should not do. But there's no way everybody can know everything. But some of the biggest mistakes are filmmakers getting, wide-eyed and melting in the presence of a distributor saying, I love your film. I want to distribute your film. I love you. I love your project, whatever. And that's filmmakers, dream of that, right? They want distributors to love their film. They want a good distributor to handle their film. They want it to be successful. They want to make money, or at least get on to the next project and have a successful first or second film. So when a distributor says, hey, I really like your project, I want to handle it, filmmakers suddenly lose all reason and just kind of like are ready to do whatever the distributor says, ready to sign whatever distributor's paperwork is, whatever the contract is that they're given, and they don't negotiate the contract. Many first-timers don't, even second-timers don't. They don't know that they have the ability to negotiate the terms. They think they have to accept whatever is given to them. And that is unfortunate because most of the time those contracts are never favorable to the filmmaker. They're what I call, they're favorable to the distributor. The terms, what's in the contract, what isn't in the contract. And I don't want to bore your audience with, legalese and stuff. And I'm not an attorney anyway, so hopefully I won't bore them. But there are a lot of clauses that need to be in a contract that serve as your protection as a producer. And many distributors don't have those clauses in there. And when a filmmaker says, okay, here's what I need in the contract. I need this and this and this and this, especially if you have an attorney working with you on this. But even you as the filmmaker should know more or less the major things that need to be in a contract that serve to protect you. So when you counter to a distributor and say, I need this and this and this and this in the contract, most distributors are not going to say, what? Get out of here. You're insane. They're not going to do that. They almost expect that a savvy filmmaker is going to say, listen, I want audit rights in the contract if they're not there. I want a performance guarantee or a performance clause, and we can get into that, later perhaps. I want expense caps in the contract. I need language that specifically talks about if you break the contract, here are my remedies. There are a lot of things that need to be there. And so a distributor who gets a filmmaker or producer who says, this is the stuff I need, if that distributor says, no effing way, not going to do it, that's a deal breaker, then you walk away. You walk away. You leave the table. You leave the room. You hang up the phone because you're going to get screwed. And too many producers and too many directors just accept what's given to them, and then they are screwed. And 80+% who get screwed entirely on their first film will never make another film because it just destroys them. Given how hard it is to make a movie, how hard it is to get it in the marketplace for most people, how challenging, how many years, how much blood, sweat, and tears has gone into it. It's just not something people have the stomach to continue to do over and over if there's not a good outcome at the end. So that's kind of the big thing. That's one of the biggest things. One of the again, every week I see some contract, I hear about some contract someone signed, and I'm like, are you insane? Why would you sign that? Why would you sign a 5-page distribution contract, right? That might not make sense to your audience, but, distribution contracts, good ones, aren't going to be less than 20 pages. They're not going to be less than 20 pages. If you're signing a 3-page or 5-page contract, I guarantee you there are no protections in there for you. The distributor will screw you. So I hate to be, I'm sorry I'm being so direct or blunt about it, but that's, it kind of like, a little piece of me hurts every time I see that or hear about that. And, I could go on for an hour about that, but we don't want to bore your audience.
Well, are there certain companies that are kind of known for doing, I don't want to name any names, but
Sure.
Do you kind of know the people that are out there prying on?
Yeah, and this is yes, absolutely, and this is kind of one of the unfortunate aspects of the film industry. Maybe any industry. Any industry has a certain amount of corruption in it, whether it's the oil industry or the banking industry or whatever. The film industry does as well, and I don't want to sound like I'm, if anybody gets the feeling like I'm bashing Hollywood or I'm bashing the film industry, no, there are good people in it. And I'm part of it, and I think I'm a decent person, but there is a lot of corruption, and that's why. So for example, foreign sales companies. This is a good example for your audience. Foreign sales companies. These are the companies that sell internationally, sell your movie internationally around the world, outside the U.S. and Canada predominantly. They're selling to Germany, France, Japan, Spain, etc. Most of those companies are in Los Angeles, but there are, I'd say, there's a percentage, a small percentage that are in other countries around the world. And many of these companies have contracts that are not, favorable initially. And here's an example. Expense caps. There aren't expense caps in any of those contracts. You have to negotiate that. And if you don't negotiate that, you're probably going to get screwed. So you have to negotiate that. Another example.
Can you just define what that is real quick?
Yes. Expense caps means that you and the distributor are agreeing upon specific dollar amounts or specific dollar maximums that will be spent on your film by the distributor or by the sales agent. Sales agent. So by the foreign sales company, they're going to say, so what these contracts, this will dovetail. So in these contracts, often there are clauses or paragraphs that say that foreign sales company gets to recoup $100,000 in expenses on your film, or $150,000 in expenses, or $75,000, whatever. And it will say that. It'll be specific language. Now, no producer should accept that if it's a independent film without any big names, or, if Brad Pitt isn't in your movie, you should not accept that because they're not going to spend that kind of money on your film. So what you do is you negotiate that down to as small number as possible. And ideally, you dovetail that with expense caps, meaning that if you negotiate that $100,000 down to, let's say, $20,000, then you specify, you define how they can use that $20,000. And this is a conversation that has to happen between you and the sales company. And so you say, listen, okay, let's say you get them down to $20,000 in recoupable expenses. Now you ask them, okay, great. How are you going to use that money? I'd like to define that. And the reason you try to do this is because you don't want your sales company to have this ongoing, evergreen ability to charge expenses to your movie so that you never see a dollar, you never see a profit. And that's the danger. So if you don't have expense caps, your movie could never be profitable if you're with a company that's not honest. It will never make any money because whatever territories they sell will be eaten up by their so-called expenses. So expense caps protects you or helps protect you so that if you have, let's say, $20,000 cap, and that's defined as, let's say, $7,000 in advertising and $4,000 in a publicist and, and other things, then they can't just suddenly wake up one day and go, oh, you know what, we spent $20,000 flying, a promotional team to Germany to do X, Y, or Z on behalf of your movie, and it cost us $20,000. Sorry, but we needed to do that to make a sale. That kind of BS won't happen if you have expense caps. Now that's kind of an outrageous example that I just used about, flying a promotional team to Germany for $20,000. But that's the gist of what could happen without expense caps. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's very important to have that in a contract. And foreign sales companies, you can get that into contracts with foreign sales companies if you negotiate it. You can get that into contracts with most distributors if you negotiate that. The one caveat, the one exception, will be if you have a movie that, makes some, that premieres, let's say, at Sundance or Toronto, and a feeding frenzy breaks out, and suddenly you have the Weinstein Company and Lionsgate and, A24 and, Sony Picture Classics fighting for your film, and you're going to score $1 million or $3 million or $5 million on your movie because they're going to buy all rights. You're not going to get expense caps into the contract. They're not going to agree to it. That ain't going to happen. But, you're going to see a nice fat check at the beginning. So you kind of shouldn't really necessarily care too much. The place where people get hurt, in addition to what I've just talked about, is and I'm kind of jumping train of thought here, but we can always discuss this again more later, is that when people make domestic deals in the U.S. and Canada, often they make deals for all rights of their film to a company. There's no advance, no money up front. There's no expense caps. And they've given them all rights in the hope that they're going to see some money down the road. And those are deals. This kind of gets into the weeds a little bit, so, maybe we save this for a little later in the podcast. But this is, I'm not in favor necessarily of those deals. There's ways to carve certain things out of that deal so that you at least can still make money, even if your distributor is maybe not the most honest distributor. I don't want to sound like, I don't want to, not all distributors are crooked. So I don't want to imply that they all are.
Just most of them.
I sorry?
Just most of them.
A lot of them, yeah. A lot of them are. And when you have a film that they really, 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 really want, that's when you have leverage, and you can negotiate better terms. If you've made a movie with no names in it and it's a drama, you know what? You have no leverage unless you win Sundance or you get an award at Sundance or you premiere at Toronto and, you're the buzz of the festival. A drama with no names, you have no leverage. So that doesn't mean you shouldn't make a drama with no names, but when you have leverage, you can really negotiate things. And part of one of the things that I teach and share with filmmakers is creating leverage for your film so that you aren't at the beck and call of one distributor who's knocking at your door, but that you actually have a project, a completed film that has multiple people vying for it. That's the ideal situation. And that's how you can pretty much, get within reason whatever you want into a contract.
So what are the ways that you think that you can get people? I mean, I usually approach it from the opposite perspective, which is I'm just worried that nobody's going to want to pick up distribution,
Well, right.
And so whenever I'm looking at it I want to make sure I have everything so I can deliver that so I can actually make the deal. But you're kind of approaching it from the opposite perspective, which is, you really have to be careful who you're dealing with. Yeah,
just because, so many distributors are indeed, not worth, making a deal with.
Right.
I hate, I won't say the name of the person or the name of the company, but, I even had a friend, quasi-friend, someone I knew. It's not like we hung out at the bar and had beers or whatever, but, someone I knew and someone I vouched for who became a distributor, opened up a company, had some funding, started distributing movies. They had a deal, an output deal with Warner Brothers. So, if they picked up someone's film, it would come out through Warner Brothers on Blu-ray and DVD with the Warner Brothers logo on it, so it looked nice for those filmmakers, for those producers. And this person, at some point in time, decided to just be a crook. And he ripped off nearly every single film that they handled, that him and his company handled. And that's I don't even know how many hit films they ended up distributing before they filed for bankruptcy and disappeared. But, it was a situation where $4 million in revenues from all of these movies was just missing. There was no explanation for where it went. There was no record of where it went. So this is a guy who I actually thought was a decent human being and turned out to be a crook. So, I guess the old adage of you never really know who someone is. I guess you really never know who someone is. But anyways, back to your question. I think, it's really, it's a challenge given it's a challenge, and one really has to approach distributors cautiously. You've got to know what the main things are that should be in any contract. And after one's been through this process a few times, usually the producers, if they really paid attention, know. But you've got to know what should be in those contracts, a good contract. And it's really, really important to not only understand yourself, the contract, be able to read it yourself, understand what it actually says, but then also to have a really good entertainment attorney and one who knows distribution. Not just a general practice entertainment attorney, because maybe they don't deal with distribution contracts, so they don't know what really should be in there to cover your butt fully. So one who really negotiates and works with distribution contracts. And you qualify an attorney, ahead of time. You say, look, do you negotiate contracts with distributors for your clients? Oh, yeah, we do all the time. Don't just accept that. Really kind of drill down a little and say, okay, well, Don't have to tell me your clients, but tell me the names of a few companies that you've dealt with their contracts. And that should be a no-brainer. For an attorney who really does that stuff, it shouldn't be hard for them to say, oh, yeah, I dealt with a contract with Lionsgate. I've dealt with a contract with HBO. I've dealt with a contract with whatever. Because I can't be passionate enough about this. You got to have a really good attorney covering your back. So you got to know, and you got to have a good attorney who's also knows how to cross the T's and dot the I's. Because it's your livelihood at stake here. If you don't make any money,
is this someone different than the attorney that you've got for all of your other legal documents, or can it be the same attorney?
It could be the same attorney, but sometimes attorneys are really great with all your production documents, all your legal, all your production, but maybe they don't typically deal with the after movie stuff. Maybe they don't typically deal with distribution contracts. I have. Okay, here's an example. I did use one particular attorney for a lot of things years ago, and then when I had him handle my distribution contract, he missed certain things that I only learned later on, in my journeys of the film industry that should have been in that contract. Like, this might be minor, this might be a minor point, but like if the distributor is late with their payment, that they will be penalized a percentage, whatever that is, 10% per day, or some percentage per day for each day that they're late in getting you the monies that you're due, whatever date that is in the contract. Usually it's based on a quarterly basis for the first 2 years. So if your check and report are due on, let's say, June 1st, and your money and your report aren't there on June 1st, the distributor starts getting penalized, a monetary penalty, because that forces them to be on time with you. And a lot of distributors are notoriously late. And if there's no penalty, well, they have no incentive to be on time. You're just another film in their roster. Do they really care about you? Well, we hope they do, but yeah. So, while that's a minor point, it actually is something that should be in contracts. Because a distributor who's going to pay you on time isn't going to have an issue with that. If you run into a distributor that says, oh, no, we never do that. Why? Well, you're promising me to deliver this 60 days at the end of each quarter. Why is it such a big deal to be penalized if you're not on time? Anybody who resists that means that they don't pay on time, if at all. So that's why I really like to qualify attorneys, because even minor things like this can make a big difference in your having success with your film via that distributor.
Now, can you talk about some of the more typical contracts that are going on with these deals that are being made? Sure.
I mean, right now, one of the very predominant things that has happened over the past couple of years is, and this is both good and bad for producers, when someone is making a domestic deal, and for any of your international listeners, when I say domestic, I'm talking about the U.S. and Canada. So when a U.S. and Canadian deal is being made with a distributor, in the past, the market was very much, and this is more or less, I mean, VOD was around, but this is before VOD became a big market. You had your theatrical, your DVD Blu-ray, your television, your foreign, and so you had distributors that some that either handled all of that, or some that specialized, right? So your DVD and Blu-ray distributors, of which at one point there were well over 100 of them, that actually acquired product and put it in the marketplace. That's all they got. I mean, that's all they were looking for was just DVD Blu-ray rights. They didn't care about television necessarily or anything else. And over the past couple of years, because VOD has grown it's still a small market compared to DVD and Blu-ray. You know, this might blow the mind of your audience, but, you know, last year alone, DVD and Blu-ray was still the largest market for generating revenues of all the markets in the U.S. and Canada at $11.8 billion. Wow. So people think, oh, my God, Blu-ray and DVD are dead or they're dying because we've been told that for 3 or 4 years. Well, yes, it drops by about $1 billion each year, more or less. But it's still even more than theatrical. And by comparison, on VOD, for movies on VOD, and this includes both internet platforms as well as the cable satellite telephone company platforms that we access, many of us will access through our television set. Both of those, all of that combined, the VOD rental monies last year was only $1.9 billion. So that was, you know, just in comparison last year, DVD Blu-ray was still more than 5 times the size of the VOD market. So,
is that because it's cheaper, or is that because there's more?
What do you mean by more?
I mean, like the cost per, you know, if you're doing something in VOD, I would assume that the cost is less than DVDs and Blu-ray.
Yeah, right. Well, all right. So when I, you know, and you know, we can always get into this, but in terms of the VOD, which obviously, you know, for your audiences, you know, you're paying $3.99 or $5.99 or $2.99 to watch a movie online or through the cable system on your TV set. Sure, the price point is lower than buying a DVD or a Blu-ray for $15 or whatever. But so part of it is that the price point is lower. But it's still, you know, despite the millennial generation not buying Blu-rays or DVDs or not buying them much, you know, on a smaller scale, it's still a huge market because there are still people buying this stuff and people who want to buy this stuff. And part of that is that the studios, you know, made a decision a few years ago to really back Ultraviolet. And by doing so, they're selling packages, right? So you buy a movie and you're getting to buy the digital, you buy the physical copy, but you're also getting the digital copy. You own the digital copy. So you can watch it physically, you know, with the physical disc, or, you know, you can go wherever you want and access it from the cloud and watch it on any device. So that was a very smart thing for the studios to do. There was a lot of controversy about who they wanted to support and whether they were going to, and, you know, and the writing eventually was on the wall that they really needed to get behind one major system and support it. Otherwise, they were going to lose their enormous profits from DVD and Blu-ray, you know, very quickly. So that actually is, in my opinion, has propped up that market and kept it from totally caving in. And again, it is dropping a bit each year, but it will be around for some years to come, and it's still, you know, anyways, it's still huge right now. You know, in LA and New York City, you know, whenever I'm out, you know, whenever I'm talking to colleagues and whatever, I mean, we all, you know, for the most part, none of us buy DVDs or Blu-rays. Well, you know, Blu-ray maybe because of the quality we want, but, you know, a lot of people I know don't buy that stuff anymore. But I'm in LA, you know. If you're in Omaha, Nebraska, or you're in, you know, wherever, and you're outside of where kind of out of these major urban centers, you know, you're probably more likely to be someone who's going to the Red Box at the 7-Eleven and renting a disc for a day or two. You know, and that is shifting, and that is changing. We've only had wireless internet TVs for, I think, 2 years now, a year and a half, 2 years is when they first started coming out. Mm-hmm. So, that is, in my opinion, is a game changer, because once enough of America has these, it's very easy to just hook it up to your router, to your wireless connection, and then you can get anything you want. You could do that through your DVD or Blu-ray player, right? But a lot of people are not technologically savvy. You look at every DVD player or whatever across the country, I will bet you that there are more people who have the blinking time thing on it at 12 o'clock than that has ever frickin' set that thing, So, expecting people to be able to hook it up properly through their Blu-ray player or to, prior to the internet wireless TVs, being able to, figure it out, get the right, router, get the right stuff, get the right connection. I mean, people don't do that for the most part. You or I might, but general America doesn't. So now with the wireless TVs, the more that comes, the more that saturates the market, I think that the quicker we might see DVD and Blu-ray revenues decrease. So that's my view on it.
Okay, you were discussing the contracts that have kind of changed over the last couple of years that used to be just for Blu-rays and DVDs.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you for keeping me on track on that one. All right, so now, because the market, at one point was $20-something billion for DVD and Blu-ray, and it's now this year it'll be less, right? But last year was $11.8 billion. These companies that are still in the business of Blu-ray DVD are now asking for all North American rights, not just disc rights, but all North American rights. They want everything. And VOD aggregators want everything. Everybody wants everything now. And this is kind of this is a fairly new development, as I said, maybe past couple of years. Everybody wants everything. So you make a deal with one company and they now control all North American rights. Okay? So on one level, that seems like a good thing. You only have to make one deal, and they're going to handle all the rest. Sounds good to me. Is there a problem with that? Yeah. Often there is. If you're not getting in advance, I mean a real advance, not $5,000, but a real advance, five-figure advance at least. If you're not getting that, and the truth is that that's not being offered to a lot of movies these days, then I'm not making an all rights deal. No effing way. No way. And producers who do this are usually making a big mistake. Here's why. Let's say you make a deal with a VOD, one of the major VOD players out there, one of the major aggregators. Okay, their specialty is VOD. Their specialty isn't Blu-ray and DVD, or television sales, or internet, or foreign. Their specialty is VOD. So what do? They're going to farm out the rights to your film to other people, to other companies, to push those rights. So aggregator X will say, great, and they'll pitch your film to, let's say, a Blu-ray DVD company they might have a relationship with. And if that company says, yeah, we like the film, we'll take it on, great. Then those rights get exploited. But if that company says, no, not interested, do you really think that VOD aggregator is going to go out into the marketplace and solicit the other 50 or 60 DVD Blu-ray player companies? DVD Blu-ray companies, and see who's interested, who might want to take a risk with the film? No. They're going to go to a few people maybe, but they're not going to go to all 50 or 60. So the chance of your film getting a deal goes down. Same with television. They're not calling up Showtime and IFC and Sundance Channel and USA or any of these cablers or and saying, hey, we have this film, we want you to check it out. We're trying to make a television deal. No, they'll farm that out to someone else to do. So then not only do you have less control, there's another middleman in the mix here diluting the revenues that you're going to see because there's now a second middleman. So you got the VOD aggregator, for instance, who is a middleman, and then they farm it out to DVD Blu-ray company. That's now any revenues from the Blu-ray DVD company go to the VOD aggregator, and then they come to you. So you have basically two middlemen, and that's kind of what is happening. So, what I'm really telling people to do is you have to consider a split rights strategy for your film if you're not getting a minimum guarantee or an advance. If they want all North American rights, because I'm not giving anybody North American rights, all North American rights. Everybody who gives away that, I have yet to see a real nice success story from that.
Is that also something that you have to worry about with foreign rights? Are there people that just try to say, okay, we're going to do everything and
now that's a different. Yeah, that's a different animal with the foreign sales companies. Again, most of them being in LA. You make a deal with foreign sales company X, and now their job is to sell whatever rights they can to each territory. And typically what that looks like is, let's say you've got, an action film with a European name in it, whatever, some European name actor, for instance. Well, then you'll probably sell France and Germany and maybe England and a few others. But what that sales company is doing is selling all available rights, usually. Well, they're selling whatever rights that the distributor in Germany wants to buy, or the distributor in France, or the distributor in England. So the foreign sales company is a middleman too, but that's why we call them sales agents. Your foreign sales agent. And if that company that they sell to in Germany, for example, only wants, let's say, television, then maybe they're only going to pay for television. That means that your sales agent could perhaps find another company in Germany that would want to get the disc rights, the DVD Blu-ray rights. But often that doesn't really happen too often. It doesn't happen too often. Usually the sales agent is going to make whatever deal they can for as many rights as possible with one company from each territory. Because if somebody,
is more convenient for them, or is it better
for you? More convenient for them. But also, if let's say, if they're like making a deal with one of the main distributors in Germany, and that company says, you know what, we don't want any theatrical, and maybe we don't care about the DVD because we don't think there's a market for this particular film or whatever, and they just want television and internet, then that's probably the only deal that's going to be made. It's not worth the sales agent's effort and time to see if there's someone in Germany that would want the disc rights. And if the price is good enough, if you're getting, 30, 40, 50, I'm talking about a film with no names or tiny names. If you're getting $30, $40, $50,000 for Germany for just some rights, as a producer, you might be happy with that. And why do you want to spend, capital, pressing your sales agent to, well, we didn't get a DVD deal in Germany. Can you get a DVD deal in Germany? No, I mean, I just want my sales agent to sell as many territories as possible and for the highest price possible. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So is there one of the things that always makes my head spin is when you're first starting out with your budget, and you're trying to determine, okay, how much can this film expect to make? And you're talking about foreign sales and distribution, and maybe you want to line everything up so you're going to the AFM, to try and find buyers. Is there any way that filmmakers and producers can kind of find that sweet spot of what they can expect to make? What stars are going to be like valuable in certain territories and all those things? Is there some sort of methodology that's in place with something like that?
That's a great question. That's a perfect question to ask, and there are two aspects to this.
Okay.
One is, okay, let's say you you're going to make, let's say you're going to make an action film for $1 million or $800,000 or whatever your budget is. And, because action films aren't easy to do for no money. So your budget is, $1 million. Okay. I would probably be having conversations with either the sales company that I'm going to use, the international sales company, the foreign sales company, or I'm going to have conversations with several companies and get their input on what are the best names, given my budget level, what are the best names that will mean automatic sales in certain territories. And that could either be a European actor or an American actor. So if I know that, I don't want to necessarily name any names because, but so actor, B-level actor, a B-level actor. Right. If I know that one B-level actor means more than other B-level actors in Germany and France and, in some of the major territories, then I'm going to probably want to cast that actor because right now and for the next year or two, his name's going to, people's values don't go up and down dramatically in a short period of time. So in a course of a year or two, you're not going to see B-level actor, go down tremendously in value in a very short amount of time. So you could be safe by casting that actor. Here's an example. I actually, although it's a little bit of reverse, I had a producer in Switzerland who wanted to break into the U.S. market, and he gave me a list. So he got my program, my 3-day distribution program, and he studied it, and then we did a little consultation afterwards. And he wanted to be sure that he was going to cast an actor that would mean something in the American marketplace. I mean, mean something enough that he could get some good deals, a good deal or some good deals, because he wanted to start producing for the American market. But he's he lives in Switzerland, and I think he'd only done some short films. So he sent me a list. He had a budget. He sent me a list of actors, and I looked at the list. And I said, okay, of his list, William Baldwin is the best one on that list that he gave me. I said, so if you want the best possible deal, this is the best. Out of the list of names he gave me, this is the best name of that list. And so he went ahead and he made an offer through the actor's agent, hired him, and they shot the movie in Germany or Switzerland. I mean, they were shooting it overseas. He then ended up, when the film was done, making a deal with Sony Pictures for the film. So, he accomplished his goal by having the right name or good enough name, and it was also a thriller. So a good genre and the right name, and he accomplished his goal of having a success and breaking into the American market. So the same thing, I mean, it's kind of the opposite of what we're talking about, but the same thing. So, sorry for some of my long answers here. You can always edit them down if you want. Feel free. You can, so yes, if I've got a budget and I want to be sure I'm going to sell the best territories and for the highest amount of money, yeah, why wouldn't I have that conversation? Because the foreign sales companies know which actors are selling right now or currently selling, over a period of time, and what kind of pricing they're getting for those actors. A lot of people play that game. I mean, if you walk the halls of the American film market or the Cannes market, you see the posters on the walls. You see, all these names of actors that you know of. You see them all the time, whatever, B-level actors. And those are the actors that are selling these films all over the world.
When you say foreign sales companies, is there like a listing? Are those the ones that are in Los Angeles that are buying films for foreign markets? Or can you talk a little bit about what you mean by foreign sales companies?
Sure.
That's separate from the sales agents, I assume.
Yeah. So a foreign sales company, and I'm sorry for your international listeners. I mean, those are the, we would refer to them in Europe probably as international sales agents, but here in America, we just refer to them as foreign sales agents. That means we know they're selling outside of U.S. and Canada. So there's roughly probably 300 of these companies. So when you've made a film, if you haven't done any, if you haven't any dialogues with any of these companies before you made your movie, you've got, potentially 300 companies to choose from. And so that's, so you're going to pitch some portion of them, your film, to be handled by them to sell internationally, to sell to all the territories, around the world. And so they are essentially a middleman, but we call them sales agents or foreign sales agents, and and it's their job to represent your movie and sell it to usually a single distributor in each of the territories around the world that buy movies. I don't know.
Now, have you ever found that people will write, like even before they have the screenplay, they will start talking and trying to find out what's kind of hot at the moment, and then they'll base what they're trying to make out of what maybe a foreign sales company tells them is like the thing that's selling? Is that something that would be?
One could do that. I mean, certainly for those of your listeners who haven't made a movie yet and they want to make the right movie, they just want to make a movie that they know will sell. You can never go wrong with one of these. You can never go wrong with a genre movie, and a genre movie meaning it's a thriller, an action film. It's blood and guts. It's whether it's vampires or zombies. I mean, it seems like it seems like that stuff is overdone. But anything that is not dialogue dependent, okay. So dialogue dependent movies are dramas and comedies and coming of age films. So if it's not dialogue dependent, and it's a genre, so again, a genre film is being a thriller, a psychological thriller, action adventure. You can almost never really go wrong with that because it transcends language barriers. A story, those kinds of stories transcend language barriers. So even though the film is going to be dubbed or whatever for its territory, again, we refer to that as it's not dialogue dependent typically. And therefore, those stories are, transnational. And that's why genre always sells. It always sells, And yes, there are times when, the vampire movies is just, or the zombie movies, it's like there's been 100 of them or whatever. And some sales companies will say at certain points in time, you know what? We're not selling the zombie movies like we were last year, or whatever they might say. Well, sure, you might have that conversation if you're, ahead of time, if you're trying to decide what kind of movie to make, to be sure that you're not doing something that just gluts, doing something along the lines of what's already glutted in the marketplace. But here's the thing, Jason. I mean, I'm not sure how to say this. There's the trying to anticipate the trend and being at the front of it. Of course, everybody would love to do that, but very few people do because it's hard and and genre sells. So unless you can invent a new genre that becomes popular, I mean, go with the tried and true.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, what would you say the other question that kind of begs to be asked in this is, now on the other side of this is really only about 2% of the movies that are being made every year are actually getting distribution. So
that's true.
What about all the genre movies that are out there that aren't? I mean, I know a lot of them are just terrible, or they don't have the right clearance, and
yep.
And all those things. But what do you find is the reason why movies that kind of fit the bill wouldn't get distribution?
All right, that's another great question, and here is generally the reason. Gosh, there's actually several reasons for it. I'll try to I'll try to be succinct on each of them. One, yes, you're right. The movie might not be very good, and if the movie's not very good, that's a problem. Two, the filmmaker, the producer, doesn't understand how to position their movie correctly. They don't know how to make their movie appear valuable to a distributor. So they send, let's say they make a pitch by email. It's a horrible way to pitch your movie by email to sales companies or distributors. Horrible. But filmmakers do it, and they don't get a response, and they think, oh, they just aren't interested. No, it's because you made a pitch by email, which is stupid. Now, if you call them on the phone and they say, we only take pitches by email, okay, then you send an email pitch. But positioning your film to be valuable means more than that. It means that you have got really good key art, right? And key art, by that I'm talking about the movie poster. The cover of your DVD, the poster of your movie, the artwork that's going to eventually be everywhere, online, anywhere that your movie would be seen, they're going to see a picture of your poster. Most independent movies posters suck. They suck, and they suck because the filmmakers are doing it, creating the stuff themselves. They don't either have the money to hire a graphic designer, or they don't want to hire. They think they're so, I'm sorry, but a lot of filmmakers are very arrogant, so they think they can do everything. And you have to have a certain amount of arrogance to do what we do, right? I mean, you can't make a movie and not think that you can do whatever that you can fly, right? But we also have to realize that even if we're arrogant or we have a little bit of arrogance, we can't do everything. So unless you actually have a background in graphic design, don't frickin' do it yourself. Hire someone. And there's a lot of ways to hire people for not a lot of money in that arena, where it won't cost a fortune. It won't cost the $50,000 or the $10,000 that it would if you went to a company in Hollywood. So, that's, here's the thing. I'm probably going to digress a bit too much, but here's the thing that's most important to distributors. The number one thing, your key art. You don't have good key art that communicates what the film is about and is compelling, you're already at a disadvantage because you're competing against those producers out there who do understand that, and their key art is already there. It communicates, and the distributor looks at it and goes, I could sell that. I can make money with that. Versus the bad key art where the distributor says, oh, God, really? I didn't even know what that is. Or, oh, God, that's horrible. I don't know if I can make money with. I can't make money with that. I'd have to redo it. So, if a distributor looks at 10 movies on their desk, and 2 of them, the artwork is there, and it's great, and the other 8 isn't, which movie is he going to pop into his DVD player and watch? He's going to watch one of the best ones, the ones that look like they're professional, that like the filmmakers spent money on key artwork, so that means that in their mind that's a professional producer. The film's more likely to be good. In their mind, in the distributor's mind, the film is more likely to be good if it's good key artwork. And the other thing, then the distributor also goes, well, gosh, if it's already there, I don't have to do a lot of work. I don't have to redo the artwork. I don't have to hire someone to redo it. That's a pain in the ass anyways. Why do I want to do that? No, I want my job to be easier. So, all right. So key art and title of your film is important. And, obviously who's in your film, if there's anybody of note, any names, even little names, are they prominently displayed? Are they if I'm a distributor and you send me your artwork, do I get right away? Do I see, Ray Liotta's in it? I want to know, you got to communicate that. I had a producer a couple years ago who had a name in his film, but because this name only had a couple of scenes, he didn't have her name at the top with the other 3 or 4 names. In fact, her name wasn't even on the cover. And I said, what the F are you doing? Well, but she's only in a couple scenes. I said, dude, or I probably didn't say dude, but I'm like, look, man, you have a little bit of pedigree here with that person being in your film. I'll explain pedigree, or you can ask me about that in a little bit here. But you have a little bit of pedigree with that name. So that name should be first. I don't care that she's only in 2 scenes or however few scenes she was in. That name needs to be there because the distributors look at that and go, everybody knows who that person is. Anybody in the world knows who that person is. Sure, she's not a star. She's not an A-lister anymore. So what? Everyone knows who she is. So, that's going to help sell your movie. And it will help sell your movie to a distributor. So I said, you've got to change that. So we did. So, it's really important that, that you are able to communicate to any distributor or any aggregator out there that this is what the movie is with your poster. This is what the movie is, and make it compelling so that it looks interesting. Compelling, i.e. interesting. That it looks interesting. It looks like something I'd like to watch. Whatever that is. I mean, if it's a documentary, for any of your listeners out there who are making documentary films, you know what? Look at the most interesting documentary posters out there. What are the ones that really catch your eye and go, wow, that looks cool. I want to watch that. There was a all right. So Born in the Brothels. I'll use this as an example. Born in the Brothels is an interesting title. That's a film from, God, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago or whatever.
I remember it.
And, got a lot of critical acclaim and whatnot. And the poster is of children smiling and being happy on the cover. And what was interesting about that is that it was like a paradox or a dichotomy of born in the brothels. So clearly these children featured on the cover of the poster were born in brothels, but they're happy and they're smiling, and that doesn't make sense. So there was an inherent conflict in, being communicated in that poster artwork, which made it interesting. Well, it made it interesting to a lot of people. It certainly was interesting to me. It doesn't make it, it's like, what? I don't get it, and it makes you kind of want to know more. So when going after key art, creating a good cover design, do something that causes the viewer to either have an emotional reaction. This kind of gets into sales a little bit. You want your viewer to make a sale, to get them to buy your DVD or watch your VOD, buy a viewing on VOD or whatever, or watch it on TV. If your artwork gets them to have some kind of reaction of, that's interesting, or that looks cool, or hey, I want to know more. I mean, all of that is about getting your potential customer to go, I want to know more. And when you are able to get them off of automatic, because we tend to be on automatic to some extent. I won't get philosophical about that, but, we go through life and we're bombarded by so much every day, information, emails, billboards, advertising, so much that, we see this stuff as a blur kind of, And so when something catches our attention, bam, you're partway to a sale with your customer when you've got them to stop for just a split second to go, oh, that looks interesting. And when you've got them to go, oh, that looks interesting, then you sell them hopefully with, a good tagline, or they read the little description, if they're, thumbing through stuff on Hulu or, iTunes or Amazon, and now they read the little paragraph description of the movie. And hopefully that's good, Hopefully whatever you have on the back of your DVD cover and or the paragraph online or whatever, if that's good, compelling, interesting, bam, you probably have a sale because you caught their attention and now you sold them with, the whole little package right there. So really important that filmmakers understand that this is how sales are made. If you don't have the budget, if you don't have a $50 million budget to do television advertising, where you can plaster your trailer all over everywhere on networks and cablers and billboards. If you don't have that, you don't have studio money to do it. You have to catch people with what you've got, which is limited, of course. So, all right. So I digressed a little bit there, but so when a distributor looks at your poster artwork and goes, "Wow, that's kind of cool," or "Hey, I can make money with that," bam, there you are. You're part way to, a potential deal. And it really, so, the line between distributor and audience, there really isn't the big distinction here. If you've got a poster that is of interest to the distributor, they're a barometer for the American public. So if the poster works for a distributor, it's going to probably work for the public. I mean, you can kill two birds with one stone. You don't have to have a separate poster for your distributor and a separate one for your customers when you're available to buy. So
let me ask you something real quick about the distributors, response to DVD covers and things like that. It sounds like it's a fairly emotional kind of purchase rather than them putting in the analytics and doing the, running numbers and things. Do you find that it's more of an emotional buy?
Not really. I mean, because distributors are so probably jaded that, look, if you see a good poster for a movie, what is your reaction? What do? You probably stop for a second and you maybe read, you kind of curious to see who's in it, or maybe you read the description, or maybe you click on it to just see, to see what it is, right? Distributors, they know what sells, and they know what will get, and they know what will, they know what will get reaction from public. So when you have something that's good and compelling, it's good. The distributor is going to just, where they go is, can I make money with this? That's kind of, I mean, I don't mean to be so cut and dried about it. And there are invariably, maybe other things that various people in the distribution arena will think about. But when they look at the cover, when you're pitching them to sell your independent film, they're looking at a variance of factors. But the key one is, can they make money with your film? Now,
right. I guess I didn't explain what I was saying very well. What I mean is, when they're looking at a poster, are they saying that, are they going with more of a gut feeling of how much money they can make out of it, or are they going with are they putting it through some analytical test of, let me crunch the numbers, how much did the movie cost, how much is the star worth, blah blah blah. I mean,
it's going to it probably let me put it this way, it's going to vary depending upon what level of the game you're playing at.
Okay.
So let's say you've made a movie and you are fortunate enough to get the premiere at Sundance. And because you took my course, my 3-day course, and you actually understand what you have to do to build buzz in advance of the screening, in advance of going to Sundance or Toronto or Cannes, you know what to do to build the buzz, you know what team you need to assemble to put into place, and then you go and you do it. And a feeding frenzy erupts after the screening, where you've got 2, 3, 4, 5 distributors wanting to have meetings immediately with you, the producer, or you, the director, and your team, because they want to talk about acquisition. That scenario, which does happen every year, happens at some of these major festivals every year for a number of producers, that's more of an emotional, from the distributor, they might not admit this. They probably won't. But from distributors, from looking at distributors, that's usually an emotional thing that happens. It's not they're running the numbers. It's not they're showing it to their marketing departments to see if they can sell the film. It's an emotional reaction to, they like the film, they like the first 10 minutes of the film, their competitors are interested, so they're interested, right? Mm-hmm. This sounds ludicrous. It sounds crazy to the uninformed about how this works. But if you've got something where bidders and distributors start vying for your film, it explodes into suddenly a deal will happen, most likely, and you'll probably get a decent deal if you've got several suitors vying for your film, and it's all emotional. It's Fox Searchlight saying, I don't want Weinstein to get this film. I want this film. And it right. Sounds stupid or silly, but that's that level. So that's that level. Then we can go to, then we can look at other levels. There are levels where, outside of those major festivals, where, let's say, you've got a film with, an A-lister in it, all right? I probably shouldn't use the Passion of the Christ example, although that film, none of the studios wanted to distribute it. They weren't interested. They didn't think they were going to make money with it. But I won't use that example. But, let's say a film that's not religious in nature, that's got a star in it, or it's made by a star. And let's say the studios, they do a screening for the studios, and 2 or 3 studios are interested. Well, they're going to show it to their marketing departments typically, because they need to be sure that their marketing department can sell the film, that their marketing department understands how to sell the film. And films have been turned down based on marketing departments saying, this is out of the box for us. We don't know how to sell this. And then the studio will pass. Because it's a big risk, to really sell a movie, they have to put in tens of millions of dollars. That's the game they play. That's the big boy game. And then on the smaller level, maybe on the even more of an independent level, there are companies that will look at a film, and they might really like the film, or it might be a really beautiful, artistic film, and maybe it's got a couple names in it, but they look at what they can make from the film, what the potential is for the film, based on what they have to put into it. So in other words, P&A, prints and advertising money, and we still use the term P&A even though there aren't actual physical prints anymore. It's digital, but we still use use the term P&A. So P&A, if they have to put in X amount of P&A, and the numbers show that they're only going to maybe do this amount in theatrical or in all the other markets, they might pass on a film based on that it's not worth their time and energy to make a small, tiny profit. Mm-hmm. So there are calculations made on certain levels in the film industry where a film that is, and it's not a home run or it's not a triple. Maybe it's a single, but in order to get revenues off of that single, they have to spend this amount of time and resources from their team, from their marketing department, their distribution arm, whatever. And it's not worth it to them because there's this other film where they can do the same thing and they'll make more money. So, yeah. So bottom line is, yes, the calculations can be made by certain distributors running numbers. But that's not the tiny independent film arena. That's really, is your PR good enough and do they think they can make money?
Right. So they expect for the filmmakers to basically provide all the promotional, or in a perfect world they would give all their promotional materials, and then the company that was buying it would already have everything there for them.
Yeah, I think the question. So there was a time back in the 1990s. I'm going to go back 20 years. You made a movie, and it was a decent movie. And you didn't do a movie poster. You didn't have a press kit. You just kind of, showed up at a prominent film festival and bam, there were distributors there and they bought the movie and they did everything. They handled all that stuff. That was 20 years ago. That doesn't happen anymore. It does happen at the Sundance Toronto Cannes game, Telluride, maybe New York Film Festival. There's certain, the top South by Southwest, the top 5-6 festivals that can happen at. But, nowadays, and again, it depends upon, whether your listeners are making a $2 million movie or a $10 million movie or a $50,000 movie. If you're at a $50,000 level and you don't have names or big names in your cast, you have to, this goes back to kind of where I was and I digressed, goes back to positioning yourself in such a way that the distributor, look at the 5,000 movies, more than 5,000 movies being made every year, worldwide, at least. So how do you stand out? You have to stand out from the crowd. And given that, several thousand of those are made on a very low budget, a couple 100,000 and less, how do you stand out from that? If distributors are being solicited, let's say, by 50 or 100 people a month, how do you stand out so that you're one of the top 5 or 10 pitches they see in a month, and they go, wow, I need my team to cover this film and watch this film to see if it's something we want to take on. So you do that by having a great poster. If you send your film in, and I guarantee you this happens, you send your film in with no press kit, no physical press kit, maybe a folder with a couple pieces of paper in it, and your DVD in a little white envelope inside, that's going to be at the bottom of the pile for the distributor to take a look at. Because to them, it could be a backyard movie. It could be a movie someone made for $1,000, and in that case, we're probably not going to like it. We're not going to probably want it. It's a piece of crap in their mind. So you have to look like you have to look professional to these people. You have to look like you've spent money. You got to look like you know what you're doing. And then they think, oh, this might be something I can actually make money with. So I will look at it myself, or I'll have one of my team take the movie home and look at it. And this goes to something else I want to say. It's very, very popular now for filmmakers to make pitches by email or to make their film available via a private link from Vimeo or wherever to watch the movie. Private link with a password. You can watch my movie here. But out of 100 movies any distributor is going to look at on their computer in their office, be lucky if one of those really garners any interest, any serious interest. Because you've not primed the pump. You've not primed the distributor into thinking that you actually have a winner on your hands. Winning movies don't provide links with a private link with a password to a distributor. The winning movies get into festivals, in their minds. I'm talking about the psychology from distributors, what they think about. Winning movies are at Sundance and Toronto and Cannes. And if they're not there, they're at least getting press and profile and interviews and reviews at, tier 2 festivals, right? And this goes to, pedigree. If you build pedigree for your film, you are standing out from the crowd and you are making your film appear to be more desirable. And sales is all about, psychology and manipulation. Let's get real here. Why do you buy a car? Why do you choose a certain car? Well, either your friend has recommended it or you've ridden in it or driven it and you really liked it and your friend raves about it, so you actually consider that particular car. Or you buy into the television advertising, BMW, the ultimate driving machine. You buy into that enough, you see it enough growing up, you go, well, and someday you have the money, and you go, I'm going to drive one. And you know what? You drive one, you're going to be impressed, probably, because the way it handles and the way it drives. And, that's how how you start to become a Beamer driver, for example, or whatever. And whether it's aftershave, aftershave, or cars, or laundry detergent, they're manipulating you and selling you on buying their product. And, while we filmmakers don't want to do this, that's what we have to do to sell our movie, typically. We have to rise above the crowd and show why we're special, show why we're good, show why we're worth your 90 minutes of time. So, again, I'm making this a long answer, but in America, we're a wealthy country. given we're a wealthy country, what is the most valuable thing to people? Time. You know, is it going to kill me to, waste $10 on a movie or $15 on a movie or $5 on a movie? Will that money kill me? No. Most people waste money every day on one thing or another. And it's not necessarily wasting, but, they spend $5 at Starbucks here. They throw $10 away on some thing there. And, that's not a lot of money to us. But what's valuable to us is our time. So if you want me to watch your movie, you have to convince me, Jerome Courshon, that my 90 minutes or 120 minutes is actually going to be worth it to me. That either I'm going to have a good time, or I'm going to enjoy myself, or I'm going to be entertained, or if it's a documentary, that it's important enough that I really should watch this for the sake of, my, learning something new, or for the sake of humanity, or, Dirty Wars. Why should I watch the movie Dirty Wars, right? A very, prominent documentary over the past couple of years. Why should I watch that movie? Well, A, it's a good title. B, they sold me on what the movie was about and why it was important. They had to sell me on why it was important for Americans to watch this film. And I bought into that, so I watched that documentary. But there were 500 other documentaries I could have watched. So that's part of the challenge for us producers here, is that, we have to think, as much as we might not want to do this, or that we loathe doing this, we have to think about sales, that we've made something that is a commodity, and it's an impulse purchase. And that's the truth. The movies are an impulse purchase. You've not cured cancer. You've not, made a new medical device that's going to save hundreds of thousands of lives. You've made a piece of entertainment that is consumable, but it's not a must-have. So you have to convince your customer, your audience, that they must buy this or they must watch this, and that it's going to be worth their time. And that's the challenge. And when you convince people it's worth their time, they come to the theater.
Now, you mentioned sending a press kit. Is there kind of a perfect scenario that you've put together where, in your training, where you say, okay, first of all, you might want to go to these some festivals and build your pedigree, and then at a certain point, you might want to talk with different distribution companies and maybe send a query. This is just, I'm trying to,
yep.
You tell me what's wrong with this scenario, or if it's,
Yeah, basically what I've done with my, I devised a class back in 2007, a little brief history. I created a class back in 2007. I actually did an evening class in late 2006 through the Learning Annex. Just something I put together, for an evening of 2.5 hours about distribution. And it was so overwhelmingly popular that I thought, well, this is great. I'm not going to, at that time I was not intending to do it full time. I just, but I thought I'd create a longer class, a one-day class, because 2.5 hours is not enough time to teach somebody distribution. And any of your listeners right now who think they're learning a lot, I hope they think they're learning something here. And if they are, we're just scratching the surface. This podcast is only scratching the surface. So I wanted to create a full-day class to really kind of go through the A to Z of what to do when you've made a movie. And so I did that, and then after a period of time of doing the one-day class, the rude awakening for me was, one day is not enough. It really needs to be a 2-day class because there is so much to cover. So I did that. And it covers from theatrical, you make a movie, what do you do? If you need to build pedigree, what do you do? And this actually goes back to genre films don't necessarily need pedigree. Pedigree can help genre films, but genre films have a built-in audience. So that's why, when we're talking about before, I said if you want to be sure you've got something that's going to sell, genre is typically the way to go.
Is horror still kind of the best bet, do you think?
Say that again?
Is horror still kind of the
best
bet, do you think?
If it's a good horror film, it's still, it still sells. It's always going to sell. It'll sell to the day we die. It just will. Yeah, it seems like people get burned out at times, but it still. I mean, if you put a horror film in front of 100 people and a drama in front of 100 people, at least 80 people are going to choose the horror film, or 70 people will at least choose the horror film. So you have a larger audience for it. When we look at the dramas that get released by the studios, besides the superhero films, who's in the films? It's going to be A-listers, because that's how they're going to get people into the theater for that particular film. So, in terms of the course that I created, the two-day masterclass, I go through each of the markets, from theatrical, what you need to do there, to DVD, Blu-ray, to VOD, to internet, to television, to the foreign sales, international sales. And because there really is a step-by-step process that producers need to follow to have the best success. If you want to maximize, your revenues for your film, you really need to follow a certain, protocol. That might be the best word to use, but you got to kind of follow a certain path. A lot of people right now, by way of example, they're finished with their movie, they're exhausted, they're fatigued, and they don't realize that their journey is only beginning. They made the movie, it was a year, 2 years, whatever, and they think their job is done, and the truth is they've only run half the race, and they don't want to run the other half of the race. So, that's one of the, going back to the very beginning, that's one of the big mistakes filmmakers make as well. So they don't want to run the last half of the race, the most important part. So they decide, I'll just make some deal with some aggregator, and I'll get it up on iTunes, and I'll make a fortune. I'll get it up on Amazon, iTunes, and Hulu, and I'll get it on the internet platforms, and that'll be, and I'm gonna be rich. Well, no, that's not going to happen. Because why should someone choose your film out of the thousands, the tens of thousands of films there? Now some will, your friends will, and if something notorious happens that's connected to your film, that of course could make a big difference. But if you skip all these other markets, the theatrical, the VOD for cable, satellite, telephone company, VOD, if you skip DVD, if you skip television, you just go right to the internet, you shot yourself in the foot, because you can't go back to the other markets once you're released on iTunes, Amazon, etc. That's it. That's your entry point. Your entry point was too far down the list. And that's going to impact your revenues. It's going to impact the fate of your film. It's going to impact you in your life. But people don't realize, there is still a hierarchy, a loose hierarchy, but still one nonetheless, that one must employ to actually maximize the best things for your film. Even if you DIY your film, even if you do DIY meaning do it yourself. Even if you take a do-it-yourself approach to distribution, and I teach that as well, you still, if you go in at the bottom entry point, you can't go back. Cable, Time Warner's not going to put you on their cable system if you're already on iTunes and Amazon and you've been there for months or a year. Ain't going to happen. No DVD company is going to put you out on disc because you've been online you've entered online. Nobody's going to put you in the theaters. You'd have to do that yourself. So, you really either have to do things at the same time, which, we call day and date. Same time, theatrical and VOD at the same time, which IFC and Magnolia do. Or be a little more hierarchical about it and don't start your, at the bottom entry point. So, that's what too many people do by mistake, because they don't know any better.
Right.
So, basically, if people, back to my creating this course. So then eventually, I went ahead and took my 2-day master class, and I filmed it. but I actually filmed an extra 2 days because I wanted it to be as complete as possible. And then that's how I ended up creating the 3-day, I call it 3-day because it's really like, if you sat down in your living room and watched and took the course, you'd want to do it over 3 days or more. You wouldn't want to do it in less time than that. So I created this 3-day distribution course that people can really get up to speed, from 0 to 60 miles per hour, basically, on what to do with their films, no matter what level their film is at, from micro budget to middle budget to, $1 million, $1 million budgets.
And you would recommend probably watching that before you even start making your film, right?
I would, yeah. It wasn't designed necessarily that way, but because I cover so much ground in terms of not only how to do things step by step, but the things that can help you with sales and marketing. I've had a lot of people, a lot of writers actually, who want to produce their first film, and they watch it, and they're so thankful they did because they could put things in the script. They could change their storyline slightly, or they could add something to the story that actually can improve their prospects for sales once it's been produced. Okay. And that goes to, I don't know if you want to really get into it, but that goes into, what is the market for your film? And that's something I talk about in the course is who's your audience? If you know who your audience is, or you actually sit down and think about it, you're going to have more chance for success than if you just make a movie because you want to make a movie. Who are you going to target? Who's the movie for? And that's a whole other, aspect of, covering, thinking about this stuff before you actually start shooting, before you actually take your shooting script and make it. So yeah, I don't know how, I don't know if you want to get into that. I'm not even sure. So up to you.
Well, I mean, I'm up for anything. We're running at an hour and a half, so I'm fine.
Wow. All right. So yeah, I mean, so let me talk about. So I'll talk about niche for a moment. I mean, one of the powerful things that producers can do, when they think about who their audience is, if let's say you're making a documentary about wine, for example. All right. We know that films, certain films about wine can do really well, from Sideways to whatever. And those are narrative films. But if you're, let's say you're going to make a documentary about wine. Okay. So you know what your film is about. And you kind of know who your film is for. Wine lovers. Okay. People who care about wine. That's important to know. I mean, I'm giving an easy example for your listeners, but knowing clearly who your audience is will inform you on how you're going to reach them, when it's time to reach them. And ideally, this is work that you want to be doing during pre-production and production. Start building your audience when you're making the film. Start collecting email addresses. Set up a way to collect email addresses from a Facebook page about your movie and your website. You create a website, you collect email addresses at your website. Set up a way to start building an audience so that when it's time to actually sell them, you've got a significant audience ready and waiting and primed to buy your movie or to watch your movie. And the benefit also is that if you're able to do this work or hire someone to do this work for you, when you demonstrate that you've got a following out there, that is pedigree also. That makes your film, it has a perceived value to distributors. So, if a distributor thinks, oh my God, you've got 50,000 Facebook fans for a documentary about wine, that's dollar signs to them. They think, oh my God, so there's 50,000 potential customers who've already heard about this film, already know about it, and if we target them, we're going to get a certain, probably a sizable percentage of them to buy or watch the movie. So automatic sales, right? So that's something to really, that's another aspect, another component of something producers can do and directors can do when they're going into production. And you can collect email addresses by, giving things away, right? The best way to do it is to give something away. So maybe you give access to behind-the-scenes footage that only people who have given you their email address actually get to access. Or let's say you're interviewing in this, hypothetical documentary about wine. You're interviewing maybe one of the top wine people in the world that people in the wine field, aficionados know who this person is. And maybe that person's being interviewed in your film, and now you give a little sneak peek to some of that. People will give you their email address if they're getting something that they find of value, potential value in return. And they're not going to leave your email list after they've given you their email. So, very few will. At least initially, unless you start spamming the hell out of them. But, you really, you treasure them. They give you your email address. You be respectful. You treasure them. You give them value. They'll stick with you. And you're basically building a relationship with them whereby they're going to then dump not dump, but, they're going to drop $15 for your DVD, or they're going to drop $9.99 for a digital copy of your film, which is still, why not? So however you sell it, or in all the ways that you can sell it, if you've got that audience built in, it's really, it's of enormous value to the perception of your project if you decide you want to make some deal with some distributor.
Do you feel like you should? I know some people do things like Kickstarter and Indiegogo simply for getting some of the, the public awareness that they're actually building a project. Is that something that you recommend, or is that kind of? It's
not a bad idea. I don't. It's not a strategy that I like go around promoting, but but I'm aware of it, and it's not a bad idea. Certainly, people who launch campaigns on Indiegogo and Kickstarter, if you're going to launch a campaign, ideally it should be to raise money, because there are a lot of ways to. There are a lot of ways to really build an audience for a film, and there's a lot of inexpensive ways to do it. And I don't necessarily mean doing one of those like my page campaigns at Facebook. That can be done, and I have a client who has almost 300,000 followers on his Facebook page, but and he just wants to spend, he spends $25 a day and has been doing it for a couple of years. So he has almost 300,000 followers. And he's got a very engaged community. Anytime he posts, he has literally, anywhere from 800 to a couple thousand likes. He might have 800 to a couple thousand shares. And that's on each post he does. So there's value in sometimes in these like my page campaigns to help build your audience. But you can build audience in other ways. Here's a technique that I use, and if I want you to cut it, I'll tell you later.
Okay.
I don't really spend money. I did at one time spending money on like my page campaigns at Facebook. I don't anymore, because there are issues with it. And there are, when I say issues, without getting into it, without getting into the weeds here, there are, it's questionable whether it's of great help or not on certain pages and certain campaigns. There's a lot of, there's limitless, but there's a lot of BS that goes on in the background that we don't even know. It came out last year and the year before, a couple different people, high-profile stories about how they spent $100,000 on a Like My Page campaign, and it turned out that a significant number of those were fake likes. So, you have to dodge that kind of a bullet today with that. But you can, if you've got interactivity, around your film, maybe you do a post on your Facebook page. You give away something in return for them to signing up to an email list. Give them a free access, a free piece of something that they deem valuable enough to give you their email address for. And you can build community and build an audience that way. it's something that I've used on Facebook, and the truth is that sometimes I have better results than other times, depending upon how I'm employing it. But or Twitter, and YouTube, building a YouTube channel perhaps for your film by giving people, content that they can consume. And no, you're not getting any email addresses there, but if you build a YouTube channel around your film or around whatever it is you're doing, and and you could get thousands and tens of thousands of followers, that's important to do. I mean, if one has the time to do that, that's important. And same with Twitter. So,
the thing that you're that I think you're saying is just as a filmmaker, you really have to become an online marketer as well and learn how that works.
Well, unfortunately, to some extent, this is true. Or you have the budget. You hire the budget. You create the budget where you can hire one or several people to oversee it for you.
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, because, and again, it depends upon what level of the game, you're playing at. If you're making a $10 million movie, you know what, you're hiring out for that. You're not going to do it yourself. It's time consuming. If you've made a $20,000 movie and you don't have the money to hire someone, you're going to have to learn how to do it yourself to increase the chances of success for your film. And it's not something that most producers and filmmakers really want to do, So that's the challenge with DIY. I'm probably digressing here, but that is a challenge with DIY, is that most people don't really want to get into the weeds and be their own distributors and marketers. But we have to be aware and be conscious of the willingness to do at least a little bit of it, even if we have a distributor. Certainly we have to do some of it if we're making a deal, before we make a deal with a distributor, to get them to want our film, to get multiple distributors to want our film, so we can have the best shot at getting the best deal. But even then, so that's good, so even when you make a deal with a distributor, you're probably, going to want to be doing some of your own work in conjunction with what they're doing to help sales, to help support it. And this dovetails into one more thing, which is a little tangential, but in the realm of what we're chatting about. Because a lot of distributors domestically want to make all rights deals. If they're not going to give me, like I talked about before, if they're not going to give me an advance, I ain't making that kind of deal. I'm going to give them certain rights. I'm not going to give them all rights. And some of those rights that I hold back probably are going to include, let's say, I make a deal with a VOD aggregator, and we're making a deal for both parts of VOD, which is cable satellite telco, a telephone company, telco for short, and all the internet platforms, iTunes, Amazon, all of that, okay? I am probably going to want to, depending upon who the aggregator is, I might want to carve out the ability for me to sell my own movie from my own website. So I might say, okay, aggregator, you get all rights North America for VOD and internet, except I get to sell it, stream it from my own website for those customers who want to buy directly from me. It's not out of the box. It's not too out of the box. And that's a negotiating point that I might make, that I might enter into, in the deal, in the negotiation. That's something that I might demand. Because what if the aggregator does a shitty job? What if they only get it onto, I don't know, I had a client who their first film, they were promised they'd be on all the major cable systems, Time Warner, Comcast, Cox, all of them, and they only got on to, it might have been Cox and one of the smaller ones. So the filmmaker wasn't happy because that's where the bulk of the money for VOD is the cable satellite telco systems. So he was stuck because he couldn't sell it from his own website. He couldn't make it available through Distrify or VHX and sell it from his own website, where he'd actually see some money if he drove traffic to his website. So that's an example of where you might actually carve out certain things in your deal with distributors, especially when they're not giving you any big check up front.
Okay. Can I ask you one quick question about, you had mentioned ultra low budgets, like, for example, a $50,000 film. Is it even possible for a $50,000 film to, I mean, as far as I understand, things like deliverables cost right around $20,000, you know, and I might be wrong about this, but it doesn't seem like it's even possible to make a movie for that little.
There are people who are making movies for $50,000. There are people making movies for less than that. It really depends upon, obviously, the genre. You know, whether it's a drama. You know, comedies, dramas are going to be cheaper than action. You know, anything with effects and action is usually going to cost more, of course. So, deliverables, the cost of deliverables, it depends. You know, really, if you're today, making a movie in the digital world, which is where we are, it's going to depend upon what, I mean, there's going to be a list of deliverables for, international, for your international sales company. There'll be a list for your domestic distributor. And if you're DIYing it, then there may not be a big list, but you'll still need to deliver. If you're making a deal with an aggregator, you're still going to have to deliver your film on a hard drive, most likely. So that's the cost of the hard drive, and your time of putting together your metadata, the right JPEGs for your film, the poster. You got to have you got to have a good poster. If you don't have a good poster, your movie's not going to sell. I don't care where it is. And
do you have to provide them with? Are there some aggregators that you can sell to, and they'll provide errors and omission insurance?
Yeah, and errors and omissions insurance. So that is usually a chunk of change that we have to buy. But it also it depends on what markets you need it for. So if you need it just for, say television, or DVD, Blu-ray television, that's going to be less than if you need it for all North American, for theatrical. If you need it for theatrical and everything below, then it's going to be a chunk of change. And there are companies, and you generally don't need it for international sales companies. And I don't want to make that an absolute statement, but when they're selling it outside the U.S. and Canada, I usually I've not been required or in the past that I have to provide E&O. Of course, that might have been, in one case, it might have been because I already had it. I forget now. But generally, and if you're DIYing your film and you're only going, if you're DIYing the film, do you need it? No. You only need it if the distributor or the company you're making a deal with requires it. Now, if you're going to be on the cable, satellite, telco company platforms, yeah, you're going to need E&O. DVD, Blu-ray, more than likely, unless you're doing a DIY approach and just selling it individually off your website. But bear in mind, E&O is about protecting the distributor from lawsuits. If you do a DIY approach, you're not absolved from somebody being angry at you and suing you over something. I mean, it could still happen. So, but E&O can be had for a few $1,000, depending upon what markets you're going after. Don't allow that to be kind of you can go to Kickstarter and raise that pretty quick if you have an audience, if you've built up an audience for your film during production. Likewise, people are like, oh, Jerome, I can't take your course. I can't afford it. So I don't know what to do. I'm like, go on Kickstarter, raise a few $100. I mean, it comes down to commitment. It's like, because people, and because a lot of times people say, well, I want to do film festivals. I have no money. Well, raise the money. You can get a few $1,000s, and then you can have all your entry fees covered, and print materials and print some posters and all that stuff. I mean, it's like I actually this is a few weeks ago I had a long conversation on the phone with a producer who called me, a very nice woman, but she was broke, and she's made a movie. She's got to complete a movie. She's broke. And I said, listen, I mean, why not, why don't you do a little Kickstarter or Indiegogo campaign and just raise a few $1,000s, and then you'll be able to do these things that you're talking about you want to do. She says, oh, no, I am not going to go raise money on Kickstarter or Indiegogo. That's like begging for money. I'm like, oh, my God. Get over the perception. I mean, there's not. It's not a negative. In her mind, it was a negative. In her mind, it was, I'm begging for money and I look desperate. You know what? If somebody's got that attitude about that, how are they going to really have success with their film? That's just from my opinion, it's a perspective. It's just a perspective. Change your perspective, right? Change your perspective, change your life. Yes, you're asking for money. It's not begging necessarily unless you think it is. And, when I made my first movie, I was in the same situation about film festivals. I had no money for film festivals. I was working a day job at HBO. I had no money. I put all my money into my film. But I got accepted to my very first film festival, and I was applying like crazy. And I didn't have money for anything. I needed press kits. I needed screeners for the press. I needed some posters. I needed, small posters that I could put up when I'm at the festival. I needed postcards to hand out to people when I talk to them. All this stuff, right? And so what I did was I just put together, this is pre-Kickstarter, pre-Indiegogo. I put together a little 2-page support Jerome thing. Hey, I got into my very first film festival. Now, a lot of people at HBO knew that I had made a movie and I was struggling with it and whatnot. And so I put together this little 2-page thing. And I gave it to everybody, and I pretty much knew everybody at the time at HBO in Los Angeles headquarters. And I gave it to everybody, put it in everybody's inbox, right? And I had to make it humorous, right? I mean, I was liked by most people, so but I also I knew I needed it to be as humorous as possible, and I'm not a comedy writer, so but I wrote it out, and I had some people look at it to help me fine tune it, so that at least people might chuckle a little bit as they read it, because I want them to feel connected to me, even though they know me. I want them to feel connected and compelled. So I put this 2-page together. I did it on colored paper. I think it was yellow. Something that wouldn't be white, because everything in the office is white, right? So you want something that is a little bit different. And that's part about standing out, just something a little slightly different. So it was on yellow paper. I raised something like $4,000 from colleagues that I worked with. Most of the donations was the minimum, $25. I had 300, 200, 100, and 25. I had 4 levels, and so most of the donations were $25. But, the top executives, gave me $200 and $300. So, I made $4,000 tax-free, and I bought everything I needed for my entire film festival run. Now, how hard was that to do? Really. I put, just the time putting together 2 pages, giving it to, putting it in everybody's inbox, and then, collecting checks. I mean, and Kickstarter and Indiegogo are so, anybody who ever complains about, I don't have the money, get a grip. Change your perspective. Yeah, of course making a movie is hard, and raising money. I had to raise money 8 different times to get my movie from starting the movie into distribution, because I never had enough from the get-go for everything. 8 different times. And I think that was probably the 3rd or 4th time when I did the festival, or 5th time when I did the festival thing. So, anyways, I'm sorry, I just kind of went off on a tangent there, but So I think Kickstarter and Indiegogo are awesome tools for filmmakers today. And as we know, even some of the, name actors are using it, as we've seen over the past year and two. And is it good for, building buzz or awareness? Well, yeah, I mean, it's not going to hurt, but I would really focus on raising the money versus, because if you do a Kickstarter campaign and you aren't successful, that can also possibly be a negative in some people's eyes of, oh, I've heard about the film, but they didn't raise the money. So, and if you're going to, and this is the thing about Kickstarter campaigns, a lot of those little videos that people do, a lot of them suck. I mean, make it, this is like it's to me like a trailer, like a movie trailer. Make it interesting, make it compelling. If it's you talking to the camera, fine. But, look alive, be interesting, have an interesting background maybe, wear something interesting, I don't care. Intercut it with things that are interesting, maybe some sketches or some footage you shot or what, make it interesting. Maybe even add some music. Don't, if, sometimes people say, oh, please, Jerome, watch my thing, and I watch it, and it's 7 minutes of them with their partner sitting there talking in monotone voices. And I'm like, they're not going to raise their money. You can't do that. If it's not interesting in the first, 15, 30 seconds, unless they're your friend, they're not going to watch 7 minutes of you talking in monotone. Right?
Right.
There was, briefly, there was this, I can't say who, but there was this colleague of mine who did a Kickstarter campaign, did this video. He had a name actor who showed up in a little segment, but that name actor was buried in like the last part of the final 2 minutes of a 7-minute thing. I said, why are you burying the lead? He should be, everybody knows who this actor is. He's an A-lister. He should be at the front of the video. People, if the video's not interesting, they're not going to watch 5 minutes to get to Robert Downey Jr.
Right.
So, anyways.
Well, it's funny, you see a lot of movies now that come out and they have like 2 or 3 actors listed at the very top, and they're actually in the movie for about 2 seconds, and then it's like, oh, okay, I guess that was that scene. Yeah, I mean,
look, that's why I mean, look, we could certainly bash the studios for putting all the best parts in some of the trailers, which if they're doing that, it's because that is the best parts of the film, and they won't get people to come to the theater if they don't do that. Or the film is not very good, but the trailers kick ass, so you think, wow, this is going to be an interesting film, and it's not. I mean, that's part of sales and marketing, and the studios don't really care because their name, whether it's Warner Brothers or Universal or whoever, their name's not really damaged by it, because the public isn't really so much aware of Warner Brothers versus Fox versus whoever, versus buying a Ford or a Chevrolet and the thing falling apart, on, having problem after problem, if that happens, well, if that happens consistently to a lot of people, word gets out and people stop buying that car. The studios are kind of immune to that reality.
One of the things I've noticed on Netflix a lot as we're flipping through is you'll see some amazing artwork, and then you put on it's got some gigantic explosion or some science fiction or horror movie, and you click on it, and about the second after you watch it, you realize the production value that you're expecting versus the poster that you just saw is completely at a different level,
Yeah, no, right, and so actually those, as much as we might not like that producer did the smart thing, because if he had a poster that was commensurate with the low production value of the film, you wouldn't be clicking on it.
Right.
And with Netflix, if people are clicking on it and watching it, even part of it, then that means that, if it's popular, Netflix will keep renewing the license fee. If it's not, they're not going to renew the license fee.
Well, Jerome, I don't want to I don't want to, be accused of abusing you and keeping going.
Yeah, and you listen, I don't, feel, since we've been on longer than I think either of us expected, either feel free to edit down to an hour if you want, or if you want to break it into 2 segments, you can do that. Whatever you want to do is fine with me. I'm not so, I'm not of the belief that everything I say must be heard, Some of what I say must be heard, and sometimes I go off on tangents that are, kind of like, well, is it worth it? Is it not? Who cares,
No, but I think, just about everything you're saying is very relevant and very important for just about every filmmaker, It's very good stuff. And, if your video series goes more in depth with all this, then, I think it's absolutely, important.
It does. It's an 18-hour program. So I probably didn't say that, before. Yeah, it's an 18-hour program. So, it's like sitting in my class it would be like sitting in my live class for 3 days, not counting lunch breaks or lunch and breaks. So it's really, my goal when I created that course, the physical course, I still do my 2-day class every once in a while, but my goal with creating the 3-day course was really, a lot of people around the world can't come to LA for a 2-day class. And the more in depth I am, the more chance that someone's going to have success. The sad part is that there are very few people out here like me trying to educate and do a good thing, right? Like you said, what you're doing with IFA, you want to help people. And that was really my whole goal with even creating the physical program. I want to help people as best as possible. I never expected to get rich off of it, and I haven't. But, I feel good about having done it, and I feel good about it, still selling, and helping people, because if I can change, this sounds altruistic, and on some level it is, but and I certainly don't mean it in an ego sense. If I can help, if 10 people buy my program and I help 2 of them or 3 of them to actually have significant success, or success that, that they wouldn't have had without the training, that's a big win. And actually, it's probably, the percentage is probably higher than that. I'm probably say at least half the people who get my program have better success or better success than if they had never studied the stuff. And it's, no film school in the country teaches this stuff, and they should all be teaching this stuff. Mm-hmm. Really. It shouldn't just be Jerome and a couple of my, competitor colleagues. This stuff, a lot of this stuff should be taught in classes in school for filmmakers, because, it's great to go to one of the prominent film schools and learn how to shoot like Alfred Hitchcock or Christopher Nolan. But if you don't know if you don't know the complete picture of when you make a project, how are you going to get, you've got to then win the lottery by premiering at Sundance and getting a big deal. I think, there are, I could go on forever about this, but, there are probably thousands of Christopher Nolans out there. Really. In the world, there's thousands, but how many are going to get that opportunity to be able to move into higher levels and make great films? Very, 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 very few. And it does almost seem kind of a, whether it's luck or providence or whatever. It does seem, it's not easy today because anyone can be a filmmaker, and seems like almost everybody is.
Yep.
So I think if I can help, a percentage of people out there actually succeed and build a career, hey, why not? I'm certainly doubt that I'll be doing this for, I'm not going to do this my entire life. I've got more movies to produce and stuff like that. So, for now it's my, I don't know, whatever, my contribution.
Well, I think we can wrap it up there. I really, is there anything else that you wanted to mention? Your website or anything
absolutely.
else?
So my website is very easy. It's just one word, Distribution. So it's distribution.la, not .com, but .la, and that's where people can find out more about me. I have a lot of articles there that I've written. Usually write an article. I'll write a new article several times a year. Sometimes I have them published at the Wrap or another prominent website. But there's always links to them from my website. And there's some video clips there and other podcasts. So, there's a lot of free stuff at my website people can peruse. So, check it out. And then you're going to mention some special that'll be available for limited time.
Right, exactly. We're going to have a special that we'll put on the show notes, and I'll put it at the end of this episode when we release it. So we'll have that there for everybody who wants to get a special discount for the courses that's listening to this podcast. Yeah, awesome. So, great. Well, my best wishes to all your listeners out there. I hope that they, found our chat valuable and not boring. Hopefully they had a long drive.
Yeah. And I and again, feel free to chop it up if it's, because I think, people look at the time at iTunes and go, what, this is an hour and 45 minutes? I ain't going to watch that. I ain't going to listen to that.
We are now at 2 hours and 7 minutes, officially. So this is the longest podcast I've done, but that's great. I mean, it's jam-packed. It's not like a bunch of chit-chat or whatever,
Yeah.
So, Jerome, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot, and I'll let you go, man. I appreciate it a lot, though.
All right, you got it. My pleasure.
All right, I want to thank my guest, Jerome Courshon, and I really think this is probably the longest podcast I've made so far. So hopefully you've made it this far. Anyway, I'm just going to sign out because that's what more can I say? All right. See you next Tuesday.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Academy podcast. Don't forget to join our newsletter for more tips and tricks on how to make and market your film online. Go to www.indiefilmacademy.com.